Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, sitting here Sunday morning, one of the more fascinating matchups we'll see all of 2024. Texas heading on the road to the Big House, and I think what makes this game so exciting is one, this Texas offense. We expect it to be one of the best offenses we see in the country, going up against the Michigan defense. That although the offense struggled against Fresno State, you look at that Michigan defense, it's still going to be one of the best defenses that we see in the country. I think even more fascinating, you have Coach Sark running this Texas offense, who is, for lack of better terms, just a wizard at dialing up explosive plays, going up against defensive coordinator Wink Martindale, who wants to get extremely aggressive. Cat and mouse game is going to be very fun as a college football fan to watch. Want to get into some key matchups, some players to watch, obviously a prediction as well. Now, before we get into it, one, many of you guys kind of know the deal. These game predictions are the best because we get to hear from you guys in the comment section. The comment section for this one, it's going to be a war zone, and I absolutely love it, right? Whether you agree with the boys, whether you disagree with the boys, whether you're mixing it up with the opposing fan base, that's the best part about doing this. So would love to hear from you guys in the comment section, and if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and Dill, without further ado, I think we got to start with this Texas offense going up against this Michigan defense on the road, hostile environment. What does Texas need to do to have success against this Michigan defense?
I think it's going to be about Texas playing the balanced football you see when they're really humming. They're running the ball well, they're throwing the ball well, and then they're working in some of that misdirection stuff that Sark, I think, is as good as anyone in terms of when he dials it up, when he uses it, and then how he schemes it up and gets guys open. Because really, when Texas is doing that and they're hitting explosive plays, they're really, really tough to stop. And that I think if you're a Michigan fan, you can certainly see that being an issue at times, because Michigan is going to want to come after them and get aggressive. And if they get caught out, Texas athletes are just too good. I mean, if you're not in position and you're not ready to make plays on the ball, if there's too much space for these Texas wideouts and running backs, they all can hit you and change games.
Yeah. Two things you noted that I totally agree with. One, you look at this Michigan defense, like they want their linebackers and safeties firing downhill. What does Coach Sark do a really good job of is a lot of eye candy, a lot of misdirection. These linebackers for Michigan, I think, are some of the best linebackers. I would also throw the safeties in, some of the best safeties and linebackers that you see in the country. What's the best way to attack those kind of players? Not really physically, but get after them with their eyes. Have them take some false steps, get some misdirections going. And you said it best. You get a guy like Isaiah Bond in space with the football in his hands. Those are kind of plays that can change football games. I think one of the keys for Texas here is one, and kind of what makes me, you all know I'm a Michigan fan. We're Michigan fans. What makes me kind of nervous about this matchup for Michigan is normally I'm feeling pretty comfortable with Michigan rolling into a game and say we are going to smother teams up front. There's not a lot of offensive lines across the country that can block up Michigan. I do think Texas is one of those offensive lines. I think that's going to be one of those battles because you look at Quinn Ewers, he still does struggle when he is under pressure, when it's a little bit muddy in the pocket. Can Michigan do that with their front four is a massive question, because I don't know if Wink Martindale is going to be wanting to send a ton of linebacker and safety blitzes, because you look at the weapons on the outside, I don't think you want to probably live too much with all that space getting created for those pass catchers. Can Michigan win with the front four? I think it is one of the biggest storylines of this football game here.
And honestly, I think the matchup I'll be looking at is that right tackle spot with an edge group in Michigan that I think is better than it was last year, frankly. I think watching Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart from last night, it certainly gives you a little more confidence. And again, Texas probably the only place you look at where you're like, well, there might be a matchup to exploit is that right tackle spot. Josiah Stewart and Derek Moore and TJ Guy and everyone else, that's probably where Michigan's need to get after it, because Mason Graham, Kenny Grant, like those guys will get what they can get, but that's a tough unit inside. Texas is really good. They're inside guys that played together for, I think, going on 3 years a whole, or for a bunch of them. So they just don't make a ton of mistakes. They don't give you a ton of easy stuff. I think the only spot Michigan can really maybe pick on Texas, let's say, is that right tackle spot. So if Cam Williams at right tackle plays a really good game, I think that puts a lot of pressure on everyone else from Michigan.
Yeah, and I look at it and say, you look at Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart. We said they were good football players all offseason. What you saw from them last night, I think they're like top 100, top 50 NFL draft picks. I think they're that good. And the matchup against Kelvin Banks is going to be one to watch. And I do think Derek Moore or Josiah Stewart can maybe have some success, but I think you're right. Like, you want to have the most success in this pass rush. It's probably attacking Cam Williams at that right tackle spot. That's probably the matchup that we're looking at the most. I think a second key in this matchup here, Dill, is red zone offense for Texas, right? You look at Michigan's defense, elite in the red zone last year, was good in the red zone last night against Fresno State. You look at Texas from last year, they moved the football just about as good as anybody in the country, but really struggled to score touchdowns in the red zone. If you want to beat a Michigan team, especially at home, you got to be able to execute in the red zone. They did that against Colorado State. Now, can you do it on the road in the big house against one of, if not the best defenses in the country? That's probably what you're looking for in this football game here.
And that's where it gets interesting for Texas, having CJ Baxter go down, who was that kind of power red zone short yardage back that they had. I wonder how they're going to kind of shuffle the deck a little bit, because I think you need a really good running back. Like we kind of said, that defense offensive line, it's good on good. It's not, I don't see Texas bullying Michigan. I don't necessarily see Michigan bullying Texas. So that does create some areas where your running back just needs to run tough. And when he has one-on-ones with a linebacker in the hole, you got to be able to fall forward. You got to be able to get those short yardage. That'll be an interesting kind of part of this game, assuming Texas or Michigan can kind of keep the lid on this Texas offense and prevent them from really just getting into a track meet and running up and down the field, which I certainly expect Michigan to do. I think the secondary is very good. I think those short yardage plays, some of those areas where you would really want a guy like CJ Baxter, who is a bit more of a hammer, I'm kind of going to be watching those, because Jaden Blue's good at what Texas mostly wants him to do in terms of his ability to play in space. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but you do lose some of that physicality that you have with CJ Baxter, where you are maybe a 3rd and 2 or something on the 3-yard line. You kind of probably want a guy like CJ Baxter running.
Agreed. I thought Jaden Blue looked great. I know the Texas fans love Jaden Blue. I think he's a great running back, but I do agree that especially when you get into some of those short areas, like 3rd and shorts or red zone situations, you probably do miss a guy like CJ Baxter. We'll kind of see how that plays out. One other thing to note for Texas, they're not like super big in the wide receiver room either. Like, you look at Adonai Mitchell last year, he was kind of one of those red zone guys that when those throwing windows got compressed, you could kind of go at him. Now, I really do like the wide receivers, right? Isaiah Bond looks awesome. I think that battery between him and Quinn Ewers is going to be very good all season. Can you take away a guy like Isaiah Bond, who they do a really good job moving all over the football field? And I don't think
I also think when you think red zone, I think there is that like misnomer that you need to be big. I think like when you see Isaiah Bond run routes and how good he is running them in condensed areas. I mean, that route he put on that Colorado State guy in the red zone was nasty, even through the face mask. So again, Isaiah Bond's certainly a guy who I think in Michigan's corner is a little bit longer, a little bit taller, and they're smooth guys. They can move really well. But can they keep up with that jittery quickness that Isaiah Bond kind of puts on them? I think that'll be kind of an interesting one, especially when you're talking about what is Texas' answer for those short yardage positions and that stuff in the red zone.
I think if you're Michigan, you got to put hands on him. Like, you look at Amir Hall or Jair Hill or Will Johnson, they're all 6'1", 6'2". Like, they're big, physical, long wide receivers that want to play a little press. They want to put hands on wide receivers. Can Isaiah Bond deal with that physicality? That's probably another matchup you're looking at. And I think kind of the wrap-up point on that matchup is, can Michigan and Texas, right, can they kind of walk that line? Specifically Michigan, right? You want to be aggressive. You want to send pressure. These defensive backs are also aggressive too. You saw Will Johnson kind of get beat on a sluggo last night because he's trying to take away the football, which later in the game, he obviously takes one back for 6. Can you balance that without giving up the explosive play? Because you said it best. If this does turn into an explosive play fest, a track meet, from what we saw with that Michigan offense, as a Michigan fan, I'm not very confident picking Michigan in a track meet kind of game. Now, flipping sides here to this Michigan offense, I think the biggest key here is, can Michigan play the game on their terms? I think one of the more frustrating aspects for a lot of Michigan fans last night was the run game was not as consistent as we'd like, right? You go back to 2023 with a guy like Blake Corman, a veteran offensive line, it was 2nd and 5, and then it was 3rd and 1. And then we're moving the chains, staying on schedule, being very efficient in the run game. The efficiency wasn't great until that 4th quarter. One of the biggest storylines here is I think Texas is going to load the box, because Michigan did not show you anything that makes you fear them pushing the ball vertically down the field. Can the Texas defensive backs kind of hold up on islands? Because I do expect Texas to walk their safeties into the box closer to the line of scrimmage. And then more importantly, does Michigan have that ability to punish Texas when they do decide to load the box is probably one of the question marks you're looking at here.
I mean, I think obviously to me, the first thing I'm going to be looking at is can this run game be established in the way that, frankly, you saw it start to get established for Michigan down the stretch. And I thought
Yeah.
the offense line started dialed in. But also, when they bring in Kalel Mullings to kind of be the primary bell cow, that's a different style of game. I think that's kind of the game Michigan fundamentally needs, especially with the Texas defensive line in the interior that I still think you have your questions about their depth, and they showed like they're a really athletic group. They can make some plays. I thought Boughton played incredible for them, which was huge for Texas. But that's still a unit I'm looking like. Do they have the depth in the size and the ability to go up? If Michigan's really just going to commit to pounding on them, and Kalel Mullings is going to run really hard and be able to get behind his pads and chew yards up, I think Michigan needs to have that in their game. And that's going to be what the interesting thing is, because I frankly don't know that we know what Michigan's offense is going to look like tomorrow or coming this week, because I think there's going to be some changes.
I would expect that with the offense that we saw against Fresno State last night, it's probably not going to be the same offense we see week 2 against Texas.
And it can't be, because if it is the same Michigan, I don't see how they really have much of a shot.
No, there's two things that come into play. One, can Michigan just run the football on a loaded box, which would probably mean you're playing Alex Orji a decent amount. And then number two, and I think this is probably the most important question, is can you punish Texas down the field? Where you look at Michigan's offense last night, it was very reliant on Colson Loveland, kind of those short intermediate route trees over the middle of the field. Over half of Davis Warren's completions went to Colson Loveland. So can Texas take away Colson Loveland's massive storyline? And then number two, when you have matchups with guys like Fred Moore or Tyler Morris, can they win vertically down the field? What made Michigan's offense so good last year is, yes, they could run the football when they wanted to, but when you did want to put 7-8 guys in the tackle box, J.J. McCarthy, Roman Wilson, Cornelius Johnson could make you pay down the field. We didn't see if Michigan can do that week 1 against Fresno State. They're going to need to do it against Texas week 2. And if they don't, I'm kind of with you. It's hard to see Michigan winning this football game. One other note I would make is I do think Texas's secondary is significantly better. I mean, that's a Colorado State offense that last year threw for over 3,500 yards. You have a legitimate NFL wide receiver in Torrey Horton. They threw the ball for 79 total yards yesterday afternoon, I should say, against Colorado State. That was a really good performance by Texas defensive back. Still, let's get into the pick here. The lines have moved a little bit, and I kind of agree with the line movement, right? Michigan in the offseason was sitting around 2.5-point favorites for Texas. It's back up to 6 points now. I'll give you the floor first. You're going to take some heat in the comment section. Who you got here?
I really struggle to take Michigan. It hurts me to do it because obviously I'm a Michigan guy, but that offense, and if that's what they think is the best version of that offense and the best quarterback they can put out there in the best they can do, I mean, Texas too complete. I think Michigan's going to be able to not control the game on defense. I don't think they're going to go up and down on Michigan by any stretch of the imagination. But playing the way they played last night and their inability to do almost anything in the pass game that really threatened you aside from getting the ball to Colson Loveland, I think is a very concerning kind of development for the Michigan Wolverines playing these really complete teams like a Texas.
Yeah, I think you probably said it best, where it's like this Texas team's too complete to kind of have that kind of offense. I think there are 9 games on this Michigan schedule that Michigan wins with that performance last night. Texas is not one of those games. I look at Texas and say, if you give Texas enough time on the offensive side of the football, it's going to be hard to not let them put up some points. They got a ton of firepower. They're going to find some explosive plays at some point if we can't stay on the field on offense.
Now the caveat is, if Michigan's offense, like if they can change some things, if they can find something with Alex Orji in terms of being a bit more maybe they just go to something like a bit of an option style game or some sort of run game that is a little bit unique. That gives Michigan, frankly, a better shot than what they had last night.
I would say you're going to see a lot more of Alex Orji week 2. I would think Michigan probably just didn't want to kind of show all their cards in terms of how you want to use Alex Orji. I do think you're going to see more Alex Orji week 2, but as we sit right now, and Dill, this is not a game that I'm like rushing to bet, because this is Michigan getting 6 points.
And it's also like a very classic, like, overreact to week 1 kind of thing.
100%. I think I'm doing that too. I think a lot of Michigan fans, quite frankly, are doing it, but the football fan brain in me, I look at these two teams, specifically Michigan's offense, and say it's really hard to see Michigan playing the way they did on Saturday night, beating this Texas team that has all that firepower. So I'll take Texas in the 6 points, but I don't feel good about it. And this is going to be a really good game. When you have the defense Michigan has, like you're especially at home, like you're not going to be out of these football games. But I think a lot of Michigan fans would probably agree. What we saw Saturday night is not giving us a ton of confidence going into week 2. Dude, we'll close it out there. Going to be a really fun game. We're going to talk about this game from a ton of different angles over the next couple of days. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. Let it fly in the comment section. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later.